Good morning, everybody, and welcome to CANTO Conversations. My name is Julian Wilkins, Government Relations and Public Affairs Director at Digicel Group and former Chairman of CANTO. I will be your moderator this morning, and it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. And this morning we have Shrivon Redhead, CEO of Digicel Grenada, and she's going to share her viewpoints on how organizations can innovate and navigate through the current times. Shrivon, welcome to CANTO Conversations.
Thank you, Julian. I'm actually honored to be part of this discussion this morning to share, our general experience throughout this period. So let's see how it goes.
Well, thank you so much. It's an absolute honor to have you on our show. And so just to remind our audience, please feel free to post your questions on the chat. And of course, please mute your microphones. So let's dive straight in. And my first question, Shrivon, is really a question on women on ICT. And Shrivon, we're lucky to have you on our show. We've actually been quite lucky to have several women as CEOs come onto CANTO Conversations. For example, we had Dion Emtaj, CEO from St. Kitts.
Yeah.
Friend, we had her on last week. The week before, we had Nikema Roya Jean-Baptiste, CEO.
Very good.
And even the week before that, we had Shrivon James Alexandra from St. Lucia. So it's great that we have you on the program today. And in fact, I can tell you that on Thursday, we've got Geraldine Pitt, CEO for USVI. And I know you remember Geraldine.
Very good friend of mine, yeah.
Exactly. So I think and let me not forget, the week after, we've got Fanta Williams from St. Vincent and the Grenadines appearing.
Excellent.
So I think that really demonstrates just how, many strong Caribbean women that we have in leadership positions. And so I really want to talk a bit about that. And maybe, Shrivon, maybe give us some of your background, and maybe if you could offer some advice for young Caribbean women who are making a career in the ICT industry.
Yeah, pretty good one there. First of all, your lineup is excellent. All my telecom sisters throughout my region, you just mentioned there, including Fanta, who's on next week. And
Yes.
It's very difficult for me to say that females in telecoms is a rarity in my region. Our markets are they're split up into clusters. So we refer to as the West Indies region. So that's St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Montserrat, Antigua, and St. Kitts. And all these islands, they're female CEOs. So what I can say is that Digicel spends an extensive amount of time on female empowerment and ensuring that Caribbean talent is not only noticed, but recognized and placed in a position of authority to make decisions and lead the company accordingly. Women in telecoms across the world is something that's growing. I guess in the past, females were not seen as engineers or telecoms persons, but that is definitely changing because it's a different generation of thinkers, so to speak. And the young ones coming up, they're definitely the innovators feeding into this trend of thought. So.
Oh, we've lost, we can't hear you at the moment.
Yeah, that's okay. For
Gotcha.
myself, I had an interest in joining Digicel, presently CEO of Digicel Grenada, but I actually started working in St. Lucia as a call center agent. And it's always a story I love. Yeah, it's always a story I love to tell because persons assume that to get to a position of authority, you have to walk a completely different path. I started off in customer care. I started off in the call center, and then I'm a very curious business. I just walked through very different roles. I spent some time in finance. I spent some time in commercial. I was operations director for a while. I tried multiple hats, and I'll be honest, this is probably not the last hat. Because I'm
That's
so
interesting.
curious.
Sorry to interrupt there, but because you played all these different roles, but that probably helped you in your role as CEO.
Yeah. Yes, definitely it was a formative period for me because it allowed me to get two folds of the experience. So you have your high level managerial understanding of what the business strategy should look like, but because I was able to walk through all the different paths, it allowed me to get the customer's perspective. And I weigh on that heavily, especially when we're trying to make, decisions or strategize or even build out a commercial portfolio as to what we're going to offer. A lot of consideration is placed in what that experience was. And we always go, what do you want? Ask them first before we step forward to what we assume they want. So yeah. And I'm here today.
Yeah, and well, maybe you could share, we actually do have a CANTO Women in ICT forum that we run during our conference. So if there's any young Caribbean women listening today, what advice could you give them? I mean, you've obviously done very well. Did it take a long while to get to where you are today?
I think it starts with putting qualifications aside, putting school aside, putting your willingness to follow instruction when you're not comfortable with it. I think you just need to understand your purpose, finding your purpose in life. And for me, it was always important to be in a position to help individuals. So for me, that's why I gravitated towards customer care, because there's an opportunity to help people. And even now in my current position, I'm always looking at how can we get involved in the community? How can we get involved in culture? How can we get involved with youth activity? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be remembered much for the designation that sat under your name. You're going to be remembered for your contribution to society. You're going to be remembered for your contribution to community in general. So that's, you have to start there in terms of finding your purpose, and then just feel confident in the fact that you're able to do whatever you set your mind out to do. Women in ICT is exceptional. We don't want to box person in to say, okay, you have to follow that route or you have to be an engineer. Whatever you set your mind on, that's what you will achieve. So for all the young females out there, don't allow the naysayers or the no's to detract you from your end position, because it's absolutely possible to get to your destination, wherever that may be.
I think that's really good advice, and knowing your sense of purpose in life, that's excellent.
It actually came from my grandmother. She would always say that, yeah, find your purpose.
You should always listen to your grandma. That's
definitely, yeah.
So that's good. So thank you for that. I'm just wondering, let's look at your organization, Digicel Grenada. And so how did COVID-19 affect your organization in terms of the operations? And maybe you could speak a little bit in terms of revenue as well.
That's a pretty good question, yeah, because Grenada's, I won't say it's a unique situation, because most of the Caribbean islands is a heavy dependency on tourism. Yeah, 56% of our GDP is reliant on tourism, external factors, yeah. 22% of our GDP is dependent on our university, St. George's University being up and running, yeah?
Yes.
So the immediate upside of COVID impact with the shutdown of the island, shutdown of the airports and so on, we had a massive amount of students exodus and leave early February thereabout. We don't have flights landing, we don't have ships in. So that should give you a visual on how the market has constricted in terms of consumers that are actually available on island to avail of whatever products or services that we're, that we have available to them. But let me backtrack for a second. Economy fine, revenues will come to that after. But in terms of what we did to prepare our staff and our office space and so on, somewhere around last year, October, we started talking about flexi hours and work from home. Because we're a technology company, we have all the tools necessary for any one of our staff members to work from any location. I was in New York for 3 months last year working. So
Excellent.
yeah, so
Oh,
it
so
was
you're
not
already prepared for remote
right.
working. You've
Yeah,
already practiced it, put it in
yeah,
place.
yeah.
Right.
It was
Good.
something unique for Grenada. I think probably we were rolling with a pilot concept because did extensive research in most islands countries where they offer their employees flexi hours or come to work for 2 hours a day or 3 days a week. Productivity went up the roof. Yeah, because you're working at your speed in your comfortable place, pace, etc. And we started experimenting with that around last year, October. So in March, when the country officially closed down, there wasn't necessarily an immediate concern for how we were going to continue on an efficiency path because our staff was already ready to work from home and deliver what was necessary from their space. On the separate side of it, although because of the scenario, we had a massive revenue impact on our business because of what I mentioned. There's no tourists
Yes.
coming in. There's no flights landing. There's no roaming taking place. There's no students back and forth. And that traffic it's an essential line for a lot of telecoms entities, whether it's myself or the competitors, whoever they might be. Yeah. So that was it was an interesting challenge because it gave us the opportunity to look at an innovative method of delivering something we never had to think about delivering before. So
Right.
so it was actually, it might be odd for me to say this, but it was a good experience because it allowed my staff to just think outside of the box. If we were used to the
Creative.
norm, which is X, everyone took on a different approach in terms of how do we function day to day? If you have a 24-hour lockdown, how are you going to deliver top-ups to our customers? Something as simple as that required us going into what we call a think tank. And we had multiple brainstorm sessions. And I must say, I have an amazing team because we were able to come up with quite a bit of creative ways of delivering things and put us in a position where we were somewhat sustainable during that
Yes.
period. Thankfully, now there's been quite a few changes in terms of the rules and regulations with lockdown, not lockdown, businesses being allowed to be open and so on. So it's been interesting, but it has been a great learning lesson for everybody involved.
Right. And from the revenue side, how's that been through, March, April, when you were in lockdown? Was that significant? I mean, I'm not asking you to go into this.
I could just probably, if I can give you the ratio of the dependency on the country's economy for certain major sectors that were completely removed as a result of this, then it might give you an indication of where our revenue position sat. Yeah. Because it went from open doors to shut doors for Grenada in a 24-hour period, unlike other countries where they had like a 1-week period or a 2-week period to prepare for a lockdown. And of course, our trusted Prime Minister makes the best decisions for the country at all points in time. So I'm not questioning that. But within a 24-hour period, we were given notice to close doors.
Yeah. So you had a very serious curfew, in other words. And what's the situation now in Grenada? I mean, I can't wait for to come back to Grenada.
I know. Can't wait to have you back as well, yeah?
Yeah, but is it opened up fully now, Grenada?
Official communication last night actually received that our curfew has been removed. So effective today, I believe, feel free to correct me, anybody who's on the live, but from what I read, so from today, there's no curfew or anything in place.
Right. That's so you're almost back to, I won't say normal. But
almost there isn't a definition for normal anymore. We're back to
the
improved position.
Right.
The new normal. Yeah. So
Yeah.
everybody's looking forward to that, especially like the different companies and service centers that are dependent on people physically being in their spaces, the restaurants and so on, the bars, the hairdressers and all of that. They're excited to get back out and working.
When I was talking to Dion last week, of course, you know, she's based in St. Kitts.
Yes.
She was saying that, you know, they've been COVID-free for a while. Is that the case for Grenada?
Thankfully so. It's been a couple weeks now, 0 cases, and all persons who contracted the virus, they've been completely recovered. So it's a positive story for us. It's just a matter of persons remembering that you still need to maintain the safety protocols throughout, you know, just to ensure that we're staying safe versus assuming it's all gone now and then we're having parties in some place. I don't know. You know, Caribbean people have to party, so.
Well, we do. This is true, and I can't actually wait to be able to head back to Trinidad, you know, for that very reason. But anyway, we digress. So
We digress.
I wanted to talk about your community, your network, your infrastructure. How did that cope during the COVID period? How did that cope with the extra traffic, etc.?
Yeah, so I have an excellent technical manager. His name is Chris Olivier. And coincidentally, our schedule for our hurricane preparation started around the same time that our COVID lockdown, etc., was implemented. So our CMC would have done our site checks, our capacity checks. We anticipated massive increase in traffic, which we did see because persons were now sitting at home using their data services with us. But our throughput and everything maintained the standards as needed. We didn't have any hiccups in terms of user experience and so on because we were prepared. I mean, the infrastructure of the network is exceptional, and we do constant testing and upgrades to ensure that the user experience is absolutely as perfect as possible in locations where they're able to access LTE and so on. So didn't anticipate anything that we weren't prepared for, if that answers the question, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, and so sort of linked to that, of course, we're in the hurricane season now.
Yes, yes.
How's your hurricane preparedness coming along?
So, I think that's what I was mentioning. So our pre-checks were done for hurricane just before COVID. So the guys would already go to all the sites, do the physical checks to make sure generators are in check, make sure there's backup fuel in check, and then on the other side of it, which is Chris's side, to ensure that the network is ready for whatever capacity is pushed towards us. Fortunately for Grenada, we have an exceptional network. Our KPIs are always maintained green, which is good, obviously. So we were fine in terms of being ready for everybody sitting on their phones watching Netflix and YouTube, whatever they were doing. The traffic didn't interrupt the user experience, so it was pretty good.
So great. So basically, you've been able to handle the increased traffic. But what about how did you try to help your consumers? Were there any particular initiatives that you came out with during the COVID period that, you know, to assist consumers?
You're asking some really great questions, Julia. Let me tell you that much.
Well, so I've been practicing, you know.
It's working out, it's working out. It's dual-fold. So there was the consumer element of it, but then there was the community element of it. So I'll tell you about 2 things we did. So part of the reality of COVID was that a lot of persons would have lost their jobs, yeah? And your household income probably decreased because your partner, whoever else was in the house with you, probably lost their job. So it's a sad reality of COVID. So as the leading telecom provider on the ground, we had to make sure that we put things in an affordable position for customers. So we slashed our prices for all our plans. So on one of our plans, I believe it was originally $6, we moved it down to $4 because we understand people needed something that they could afford, and that was across the portfolio. We also increased our data allotments on our plans and our calling options on our plans. So persons are able to have unlimited calling, they're able to use their data for whatever they want because they now have 3 gigs versus 1 gig. that was the consideration for the consumer side. How do we make our products affordable? Because we understand persons are now challenged financially. The other one, which I'm super excited about, was our joint partnership with the Ministry of Education, where we were able to, for the first stage of it, we were able to connect over 700 teachers. So what we did, we
700 teachers.
700 teachers, yeah.
My goodness.
It was pretty exciting. It was myself and Minister Emlyn Peer who worked on the project, sat and tried to figure out how we were going to get persons ready for homeschooling, because part of the challenges that the teachers had, one of them being that probably they were not technology savvy in a lot of ways, so you had to invest training in how to access your web page, how to access the curriculum online, how to use the device that Digicel just gave to you to access it, etc. So we connected, yeah, it was 700, close to 750 teachers, quite a bit. And
so
then
did you provide special training for the teachers?
Yeah, we joined with the ministry, of course, because they would have had the plan in terms of what they wanted them to focus on curriculum-wise, which sites they wanted them to access, which we zero-rated all the sites that they needed to access to ensure that there was nothing hindering them, no roadblocks to delivering what the students needed. That was very important to myself and Digicel, obviously. And the second layer of it, after the teachers were connected and they were online, I realized we missed a step. There were quite a bit of students in situations where they did not have devices or connectivity, or the option either or.
Right.
So we went ahead and not only provided devices, phones for persons to use to connect, but in the situation where you didn't have Wi-Fi at home, we were able to deliver whether it was WiMAX solutions or LTE boxes, whatever the students needed to connect. We were able to do that as well. It was close to 200 students. So that was a really important project to me, because I know it was different for the students to have to adjust to their Zoom classes, or you know, they're used to chalk and board and pencil and paper. So for the average person who had to deal with that, it was probably challenging, and we wanted to make sure they had the tools necessary to get, so they don't get left behind. When September and school reopens, I don't want to think that any child sitting in Grenada was in an adverse position because they were not able to access online schooling. That would break my heart.
You know, that's a really interesting initiative, and it shows, I guess, what telcos can do, being creative and offering, you know, different types of solutions. I'm just wondering, the teachers, how did they? What's been their feedback? I would imagine some of them may not have been sort of technically savvy, or, you know,
right.
How did that go?
Well, as with any change, there will be resistance in the initial phases. But from, my sister is actually a teacher.
Oh, right.
Yes. My sister is a teacher, so.
Oh, so she would have got one of these, she would have been part of the rollout. She would have.
Right, through the ministry, yes. So initially for her, it was quite an adjustment, because for her, she said, you know, using PowerPoint, using words and all these other things on the computer, I'm not used to that. I just write it on a chalkboard, or I call it a page in the book, and the students, but within 2 weeks or so, that actually changed. So for her, if you have to ask her today, would she prefer to be in the classroom or teaching online, she would choose teaching online, because the flexibility of having the kids on for 2 or 3 hours a day, she loves it. And then everything goes into a presentation format. So there's more options for visual stimulation for the students. Everything has a video attached to it, or a PowerPoint picture attached to it. And the students actually love it, because as we know, the younger kids, they're on their laptops or their tablets. They're always touching something that gives them visual stimulation. So it was nice to have a classroom for them, for the ones who are able to get on, that fit into what they were used to, I guess.
Okay, that's, I think that's, out of all my interviews, that's probably one of the most interesting initiatives I've seen, and worth, so that's excellent. I want to talk a little bit about the sort of different stakeholders. in our industry. And I'm seeing that one or two questions, by the way, are coming up on the board. So we'll take a few of those in a little while. But I wondered, as a CEO of a telecoms, of an ICT operator, I'd like to see from governments and regulators' perspective, how could they assist the industry going forward? Do you have any sort of general views on this? Or are there any concerns that you might have?
Well, I must say that for Grenada, we seem to have a really good relationship with our government liaisons and the local NTRC office just the same. So the first conversation we had post-COVID was with the regulators. What do we need from you? What do you need from us? And it was the same sort of rapport with the government, just the same. So we met with Telecom's minister, who was Minister Boeing. First thing I did was pick up the phone, call him and say, what do you need from Digicel? Because it can't be easy for you during this period, and we need to figure out how we can support you. Same thing with Minister of Education, picked up the phone. Same thing with the Commissioner of Police, because the police now had to find a new way to police citizens. So we were able to assist them with drones and all these technological things that they did not have in place as well. So in terms of our relationship with either government or regulators and so on, I think we're in a good space. Initially, we thought we would have needed additional spectrum to offer the level of service needed, but we're able to pull through without that, post discussions. And I don't believe there's any immediate concerns, well, at least from Grenada's perspective, might be different for the other islands, because different sauce, different pasta, I guess. But I think we're in a decent space relationship-wise, as well as, you know, we're constantly talking to each other. So there's no surprises on either side of the fence presently.
Well, that's good. And, you know, long may it continue.
Yeah.
What I normally do now is halfway through the interview, I like to have a little commercial.
Okay.
And I'm specifically talking to you about this, Shrivon, because I know you haven't been able to make any of our CANTO conferences.
I have not. This is not the part where you make me feel guilty about it,
though. So I just want you to have your diary nearby, and I know you've got the team in the background, so they'll be making some notes. So the CANTO AGM is on the 7th of February, 2021, next year, and it will be in Trinidad. So it's actually sort of, you know, nicely positioned just before Carnival, which I'm sure will take place next year. And also for your diary, our major conference. Now, I know I invited you to the conference. I know because of your work schedule, we've not been able to. I'm hoping we could get you there next year, God willing. It will be on the 25th of July, 2021 in Miami. So
nice.
Yeah, so, and it's normally very, you know, the amount of different speakers, we have government officials. Previous years, we've had 12 ministers attend. Ministers has attended in the past, I'm just saying. Certainly your regulators have attended. So we get something like 40 odd regulators.
Wow.
Previous time we had CANTO attend. So you get, and of course, all the operators as well, plus the vendors. So you get this mix of all the stakeholders. So
very nice.
Have I convinced you to come along?
I think I'll just go book the ticket now, Julian. But I definitely won't want to miss that next year. Like, unfortunately, our board of directors meeting, there was a clash of schedule last year. So I had to go to the board of directors meeting. So thankfully I did, because I'm still in the seat. Probably if I chose CANTO, it probably would have been a problem. So next year,
Okay.
definitely, will hold myself to that I need to attend. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so let's turn now to some of the questions we have. Let me pick up the first one here. And this is from a journalist, Stephen Cummins. He's a senior journalist. I guess he's based in Trinidad, I'm not sure. Question is, Shrivon and Digicel, is Digicel ready for future pandemics in the region? That's quite a good question, actually.
That's a pretty good question. Are we ready? Yes. Our CMC meetings never stop. So we have a local CMC team, crisis management committee, sorry.
I was just going to ask you for our viewers. I know what it is, but okay.
Yeah, we have a local team and they're responsible for ensuring everything on the ground is in place. So procurement of whether it's equipment or safety things that we need in the office, that's their local job, and planning and execution on the ground here. So whether it's an earthquake, a virus, a hurricane, we actively plan for these things. And our regional team as well stay connected. So Grenada, for example, we have, how do we call it, a backup market? I can't remember the name of how internally how we call it, a transit market. So for example, for whatever reason, if Grenada goes into a red zone, high alert shutdown, St. Lucia becomes our transit market and they're responsible for taking care of Grenada. Just the same if something happens to St. Lucia, there's another market responsible for taking care. So we have like a series of touch points to ensure the market is kept safe. And we do the same thing with our work teams as well. So we have a local technical team, but any hypothetical scenario that puts our local technical team at risk, there is a transit technical team in another market that would be flown in or work remotely, whatever the case may be, to support the market. So there's extensive planning because we understand that there's a high level of reliance on us being resilient through challenging times. So the short answer would be yes, we're ready.
Great. Actually, you actually got a question from since yesterday.
You did?
Yeah, and
Okay.
so I'm definitely going to read that. It's from Dale Lamont Harper, and he's asked a sort of series of questions, mostly around retail.
Okay.
He's asked if you're seeing any kind of shift on the ground in retail, in terms of your retail stores. Are you seeing any sort of change in our customers or in the way that we have to operate?
Yeah, well, if we look at global position, a lot of your retail experience has moved to online platforms. So we've embraced that as well. From a convenience perspective, because we want our customers to have the option, if you can't get away from lunchtime, or you're probably living in the north and you don't want to take the bus all the way down, you can actually go online or WhatsApp us your request, whether it's for a phone order or simply SIM order or anything like that. So that's been the slight transition to us. And persons, since they're more aware now of, I guess, the dangers of COVID or being at risk for certain things while out in public, some persons will just choose that option. During the lockdown period and post-lockdown, when we had some, according to our Prime Minister, when we had some easements, we did notice that traffic in stores, a larger percentage, 60% of our activity happened online, which was the flip of where it was 2 or 3 months ago when everybody was walking into the store. But I think it's a necessary transition. The world is moving in a direction where convenience prevails over everything else. So if it means I can conveniently click on something on a website and get what I asked for as an individual, I would prefer that versus having to come out. I'm just happy we're in a position where we could provide it to customers.
Right, and now you're opening up in Grenada. Is that changing at all? Are customers coming back to the stores, or are they sticking with the online purchase of items?
So remember I mentioned to you, we found quite a bit of innovative methods of delivering our services to our customers. So part of that is that we now do village retail experience. So instead of coming because our stores are located in St. George's, one in Grenville, one in Carriacou. There's two in St. George's actually. But what we do for persons who live in St. David's, St. Patrick's, St. Mark's, the rural areas or so, we do retail experience tent events for them. So instead of coming to the store, we bring the store to you. And we have a team of what we call parish patrol agents, or FOTS team, because they're out about with the tent as well. And we're out in your community bringing the service to you. So traffic in the stores has not necessarily decreased or increased as a result of COVID. Traffic has probably decreased because we're now coming to you. You don't need to come to us.
Right, and so that's been quite popular. Consumers like that with the tents.
They love it. The last event I went to, we were at Guav, the gas station in Guav. I don't know if you're familiar with where I'm talking about.
No.
No. It's a fishing village on the western side. Yeah, on the western side of the island.
I obviously need to come back to Grenada.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
With,
as soon as I get wind of the first flight coming in, I'll book you something. We need to sort that out ASAP. You're welcome. Yeah, so we went there, and it was so nice to see the kids coming out because we had little handouts to give to the kids, whether it was a pencil or a notebook or some candy or something. And it was just like a nice, it turned into a mini community party. I don't want to call it a party because obviously safety is priority and we were adhering to that, but the crowds came out to see what we had to offer, and the team was all over Guav, just making sure that everybody knew Digicel had, whether it was top products or whatever we were handing out, but it was a fun time.
Yeah, no, that's innovative. I mean, that's connecting with the consumers. I think that's important.
Exactly.
And finding different ways to do it as well. I think that's something probably COVID has told us. I'm going to switch I'm still seeing some questions here, but there's one question I had, and that's really to do with the staff, the Digicel staff, working from home. I don't know if they're still working from home, or is it 50-50, or how do you see that the working from home?
Actually give my staff the option to choose whatever makes them comfortable. So there's some persons, they find it easier to work from the office because maybe you have kids at home. Remember, the kids are still home from school. Or maybe it's just the quiet spot in the office that works for you, but staff get to choose, and it really doesn't matter. I would say productivity has gone up 1,000% because people enjoy the flexibility of working wherever they feel comfortable. So the office is kept safe. We have our thermometers at the front door. We have our hand sanitizer spaces. Staff we give them masks and so on if you need to come in or if you need to work out wherever. But they have the flexibility, and I think that's important as an employer to understand the circumstances, because as a mom, it is quite a challenge. I don't know about the other moms online, but I don't know if they've ever tried going onto a conference call with your senior management team with a 4-year-old in the background. So, yeah.
How do you cope with, this is what I find so fascinating. Your mom, you're looking after your son or daughter, and your son, well, boys, we know boys can be a little troublesome. They can,
oh, yes.
We need a lot of attention, don't we?
You do.
So how do you cope with that, being a mom, being a leader of an organization, and then we've got this COVID as well? That's what how personally did you cope with it?
I think actually being a mom helps me to understand the complexities of the staff that I work with, because I have quite a few moms and probably single dads or even couples and so on. But it gives me the level of patience that's required to work with the guys and be understanding. For me, how I balance it, I just do. And I don't question the whens or the hows or the whys. Like at the end of the day, my son is the top priority. That is extremely clear to everybody that knows me, including Dennis O'Brien himself. So yeah,
Yes.
I just keep my focus on that, like son, family, and then everything just flows naturally. Like I probably want to say find your work-life balance, but anybody who's in a corporate environment probably knows it's challenging to do that. Just I
Yeah.
meditate a lot, so mental
Oh,
clarity is of high importance to me. I find it, if I don't wake up in the morning, have my 30 minutes of meditation, quiet time, then my day, the rest will follow. Yeah, but mental clarity is important, and it allows you to create the structure you need to balance, whether it's your son, your husband, your job, your whatever it needs to do, whatever you need to do.
yeah, you've probably touched on something there, the mental aspect to COVID-19 and how you deal with the whole experience. I think that's really, I find that really, you know, very interesting and definitely I think would be informative to our viewers. So let me just try and see if I can pick up another question here. And this is from Timothy. How has your team adapted to this new normal? And have you developed any new innovative products or services coming out of the pandemic? Well, I realize that we've touched on that previously. I don't know if there's any other initiatives that may have come up throughout.
I mean, I don't want to sell it short of how challenging it was. I think I'm just blessed to have an exceptional team that they're extremely passionate about their jobs and the business and delivering quality service. That's their top priority. So similarly, when I reached out to the government and regulators, once the changes were made, staff reached out to me to lay out, okay, this is what we can do. What do you need from us? And that's an exceptional quality that exists across the team. It's been interesting for them. So we've offered things that necessarily don't fit into the normal daily box of things, like financial counseling. And we do have a therapist as well that we encourage persons to talk about what they're going through, because whether it's your finances or your family affected by COVID, or maybe someone infected by the virus, or just general anxiety over what the direction of the world looks like in tomorrow, you know, that preoccupies a lot of mental space for persons. So we try to create an environment that's safe for staff, where they feel comfortable to talk about it. And if they need, it's always open door policy with myself. So everybody just walks in and out as they need. And if it requires a therapist or a financial counselor, we put them onto that as well. HR was heavily involved, administrative manager, Tracy Batiste as well. She's
Yes,
heavily involved. You remember Tracy, yes?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, she's very good.
Yeah, heavily involved in maintaining staff morale. So outside of counseling and therapy and all of that, we ensure we're doing things to keep them happy. So confession is good for the soul, and I'll confess a little bit. We might have sent a few staff members to get manicures and pedicures. We might have sent we might have sent them, you know, to a hotel to just rest for the night after you've had like 48-hour shifts and so on. But I think it's important that we keep them motivated and keep them knowledgeable that we actually do care about you. It's not just about delivering for Digicel, but as a human being, we need you to be healthy and mentally strong, just the same.
Yeah, and I love the sort of flexibility aspects to that. The fact that, you know, your staff, you make it their sort of choice, what suits them, depending on their.
It's important. It's important. Like most workplaces that try to impose a very rigid structure with their teams, I'm pretty sure that they see it in their productivity levels. Like you have to bring your staff, you have to bring yourself to a point as a leader where you trust your staff. Yeah. And if that's a factor, that's a whole different conversation if you don't have trust for the people you have on your team. But you have to be able to trust your staff to let them be and know that they will deliver what's required of them.
Okay. Let's just pick up another question here from Daniel. Shrivon, thank you. one of the earlier CANTO conversations, he thinks it was Jamaica, remarked, "We can't do it all. Government can't do it all," referring to lessons learnt during this pandemic. What would be your take on this as it affects the business model post-COVID? So how do you see post-COVID and the business model, your business model changing? Well, it sounds like it's already changed to me.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Yeah.
But I guess also the fact that we can't do it all. We all need to work together and
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. But one thing that came out of it, lesson learned for myself, and I definitely think my team, is improved efficiencies. Like, we were able to walk through our daily activities and things that probably took an hour, we're finding ways to cut it down to 5 minutes, and just making your time more efficient. And I think persons would have grown from that, not just from a learning perspective, but it probably even showed them ways of working at their homes with their family and so on, finding efficiency there. So that would be the lesson: improve efficiencies for sure.
Absolutely. I'm seeing a question here from my good friend Sergio Pengel, who normally listens into this program.
Okay.
Thank you, Shrivon. Let's assume COVID-19 will continue to impact Grenada, well, the rest of the Caribbean, through the entire 2020. Besides attending CANTO events, there must be a plug for CANTO. Besides attending CANTO events and current steps, what role can local innovators play to empower Grenada to prepare for this transformation?
That's a good question. We lean a lot on app development, and it was part of the CARSIP plan to have a session with young innovators, just the same, in terms of how are we going to develop apps, how are we going to refine our apps, how do we allow persons to access things via convenient methods, which is what I was just talking about. So probably leaning on that. The reality that COVID showed everyone is that we don't understand the ability of the technology that we already have. So we're still dependent on quite a bit of archaic methods of whether it's accessing stuff or delivering stuff. So it's a pretty good question, but I think we'll lean back on app development, getting the young data scientists involved in our, whether it's product development or placement and so on. There's a company in Turkey, Turkcell. The direction of their telecoms entity changed with a trajectory that went like this, and I'm not just speaking about revenue. I'm talking about consumers, experience, apps, etc., because they leaned heavily on young minds, young data scientists, to develop apps for them and come up with new ways of how things should be delivered. And I think because they included the community and those persons, the young persons, in the planning process, execution process, and so on, they saw a flip in terms of what consumers took on board. So I'm hoping that's the direction we can start leading on pretty soon as things start, getting back to what our new normal will look like very soon. Yeah. Okay.
So thank you for that, Shrivon. And we've only got about 10 more minutes, so we'll just take a few more questions. And I've got one here from, I think he's actually based in Grenada, or maybe he's from St. Vincent, Jerry George.
Okay. Jerry, yeah.
Right, he's based in St.
He's in St. Vincent, yeah.
Right, but I think obviously he knows Grenada quite well.
Very well, yeah.
Right, so he's got here, current and post-COVID, there is much greater need for connectivity and access. Are there moves to make access to broadband easier for small business operators and innovators, both locally and regionally?
That's a very good question. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the World Bank funded CARSIP project, which Digicel is the service provider for delivery. But what I can say is yes, the team are actively delivering fiber to the homes, fiber to the business, and in the absence of where that connection is available, we offer WiMAX solution, which is line of sight by towers, as well as LTE boxes. And there's a lot of emphasis, because that's another line on the consumer side that we can obviously explore as a telecoms entity, because Digicel is primarily mobile, yeah?
Yes.
That's what our focus was. Get a cell phone, get a SIM card, there you go. But connectivity, connectivity is obviously now something that we have approached, and we've managed to master over the last couple of years in terms of getting it set up. SU has our connection, for example. And there's quite a bit of businesses in the southern part of the island that has our connection, and we've managed to start expanding that throughout the island. CARSIP, however, it's not just Grenada for connectivity, it's St. Vincent, St. Lucia as well. So these three markets primarily. The islands to the north, they already have, I know Nevis has full-on fiber and TV and all of that up there, but connectivity is on our list of things, and we're definitely executing as we speak, connecting homes. During the COVID period, we actually connected over 400 homes, providing whether it was fiber or WiMAX or the LTE boxes. So, yeah.
And that was specifically because of the COVID situation that you
For sure. A lot of consumers, they did not realize the need for it until we were all forced to sit in our homes, and probably conversations with the family was not that interesting. So they needed internet connections to get them through that couple months of hardship there. So yeah, we're definitely providing connectivity. All the schools in Grenada through CARSIP, they're connected through Digicel, just the same. I don't know if persons are aware.
Right. So, well, maybe not, but that is a fiber to the home project, I think, to all government offices in Grenada, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's good. I'm going to ask you a question, actually, more to do with CANTO. And so you know a little bit about CANTO. As a CEO, right, is there something that CANTO could be doing for you, or for you? You're a member of CANTO, you know, Grenada is. I am. Digicel Grenada. Is there something more that we could be doing for you in terms of the organization?
I would just like to say CANTO does an amazing job of staying intimately involved in all our issues. It's like a part of the family at this point. CANTO should have a desk at my office. That's how I feel about it. But what I'm pleased
I'll
about,
tell Teresa that. Yes, I'll tell Teresa.
What I'm pleased about, and you mentioned it earlier, because that's the direction my mind would automatically go in. What I'm pleased about is that we're now creating a platform where women in ICT can not only just speak out, but create an avenue for other females who may want to be a part of it, but for whatever reason they're not seeing, it's not at the forefront of media, it's not at the forefront of any discussions that are actively happening. So in their mind, it's not something they should pursue. But I'm happy that you guys are creating a platform where persons like myself, Shrivon, Dion, and St. Kitts, etc., we can now actively speak on that and be a part of the growth for the next generation of women in ICT. So good job to you guys. What more can you do? Keep creating more platforms. No offense to the males.
Yes.
No offense to the males. You guys are obviously contributing as well, but females need a little bit more help in creating avenues for us to express ourselves, learn, grow, and be a part of something so exceptional.
So you know we're going to invite you to come on one of our ICT Women in ICT panels, right? Because
not a problem. I'll be more than happy to be a part of it, just the same.
So I've got you live on that. There's no
with witnesses.
With witnesses, correct? Yeah. No, that's great, and I think our conversation today, particularly the women in ICT, I'm hoping that would be some good information for young Caribbean women out there. So how do you see, let me just ask, it's 10:54, let me just ask a final question, and it's more
Okay.
with the future as we come out of, COVID-19. How do you see your organization, your staff adapting, as we move into 2021? Are there certain things you see out there that are just going to be really quite different? Or how do you see it?
I think for staff, the learning lesson out of this is the method of delivery. So we had to adapt, and thankfully, so they adapted, not just their physical changes, but their mental changes as well to adjust to what was happening. So I think, I would like to think that we're on the right path. For me, I'll be more concerned about our next stage of technological delivery to our customers. What is next? So we have connectivity lined up, we have LT lined up, but what's the next best thing available that we can deliver to customers? And that's what keeps us up at night, yeah, because we want to make sure that we're always on top of the game. But I think definitely staff, they're ready to go forward with whatever is required with the next step based on their mental state right now. That's how I feel.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up there. There are one or two other questions coming in, but unfortunately we can't take them all today. Yeah. But Shrivon, I just wanted to say it's been a great experience talking to you, actually seeing you again, because normally it's
I know, it's been long.
It's just emails, and I really appreciate your time. I know you've got an incredible schedule, and really appreciate the fact that you spent some time with CANTO and shared your experiences during this time. So thank you very, very much.
I just want to exchange your sentiments and say thank you for having me on a platform like this, and I'm honored that you guys actually considered me to be part of this discussion. So I'm looking forward to the Women in ICT conversation that we should be having soon.
Yes.
But thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So to our audience, thank you very much for sharing your time with us. We know that your time is important, and we hope this has been an informative session for you. Remember that our next webinar will be on Thursday, the 9th of July at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with Ms. Geraldine Pitt, Chief Executive Officer of VIA USVI, and she'll be sharing with us best practices for leading companies through COVID-19. So we'll have yet another lady that can share their experiences, another Caribbean lady who I actually know personally, and she's a wonderful leader. So that's coming up on Thursday. So all it's left for me to do is to say thank you, work from anywhere, stay safe, and stay connected to CANTO Conversations. Goodbye.